This is the Small Town Big Talk Show, the only place where you can listen in on real-life conversations about the challenges and the joys of living in a small town. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week a guest will join me as we tackle one topic that more than likely we're all feeling or have thought about, but of course, no one wants to talk about. Let's chat. My guest for today's episode is my friend Nicole Cline. She is a holistic chiropractor who runs her practice right out of our small town here in Oaks. And we sit down to talk about feelings. Nicole is part of my regular self-care plan because she helps me address and deal with the emotional aspects of my life. And we talk about how if we don't figure out how to really acknowledge, honor, and just admit the feelings that we have, that those things can manifest in physical ways to our detriment. So this is a fantastic little conversation. You'll see why I love her as much as I do, and I can't wait to hear what your takeaways are from this one. So please enjoy this chat with my good friend Nicole.
So, Nick, here we are. We were just joking that it's been like a year that we were like, we should have coffee because you close your practice on Tuesdays, yes?
Yes.
Today's Tuesday. So here I had to get a talk show for us to make this happen.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Good coffee from up the street. It's all good.
Thank you.
The reason, the thing I thought you and I specifically could talk about was I brag you up and down, not only Main Street, but like social media. I'm like crazy about you. You know this. You are one of the factors in my life. And our friendship, I feel like our friendship's really rock solid. We just don't see each other a lot outside of when I come into your practice to see you. But as my chiropractor, my naturopath, you're like the person, you're the self-care that I keep on the list. Like I haven't had a massage in a really long time, but you, coming to see you, you're like a steady thing for me, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that we talk about, the reason I love you and the way you approach chiropractic so much is that you let me talk about my feelings. And
That's true.
I have so many feelings all the time. And so you just said you have a hard time saying no. We're going to come back to that because I think, you know, that I speak to women in small towns all the time. And there's themes that come up for the women I work with. And I would guess you see somewhat of the same thing, patterns and themes, probably with women. Not that we have to exclude men in the conversation. It's just I tend to work more with women. And not being able to say no is a huge, huge one. So we'll come back to that one. We were going to say, and what?
And women are much more open to talking about, well, not all, but,
right.
You know, I mean, men, when I talk to men about, you know, this such and such knee pain might be from you know, a fear that you have. They look at me like I have 3 heads and like they're not going to talk to me about it. You know,
when you say things like that to me, I'll be like, oh yeah, I have this unresolved thing. I can't work out. So, okay. So for people that maybe don't know what it even means, like how would you categorize yourself in the realm of chiropractic? I called you a naturopath. That's what I don't know, for some reason when I throw that word out, people tend to get that you're more like holistic maybe.
Right. So I don't technically have a naturopath degree because it's something separate. Mm-hmm. And, but I do what is known kind of as functional nutrition or functional medicine.
Mm-hmm. So when you think about being like a functional medicine doctor, chiropractor, the reason I was like, I want to sit down with you. Well, first of all, you're featured in the book. Like there's a whole chapter about you and a difficult, like a tough conversation that you and I had. Mm-hmm. And I only put that in the book because I think it's something, it's like we talked a little bit about setting boundaries, right? Now I didn't set a boundary with you in that chapter of the book, but I had to have a really hard discussion and I love you. Yeah. And I didn't want to hurt you, right? And that's what boundaries are, is having tough discussions with people that we love because we love them.
Right.
Not because we want to hurt them. And so I just felt like you and I, and again, the fact that I come in here and I tell you all of my personal stuff, like all of the difficulties that I'm having and how that stuff manifests in my body and how I believe truly that my body performs so much better. Like I'm basically chronically stressed. Like we've talked about this. Money is a big stress for just my family in general. Live next door to my parents. Major stress. So I would love it if you would share just a little bit about what you find when it comes to emotions and how our bodies perform. And then also just keeping in mind that this is all about small town living, right? And so how does living in a small town potentially exacerbate all of that? And again, like knowing you can't talk about specific people, but you can
Right.
certainly give some for instances, right?
Okay, so we'll start with basically just an explanation of how emotions can manifest physically.
Right.
It's a hard thing to describe and explain a little bit because unless you've been to me or been to a person who does muscle testing or energy work of any sort, it's not like we're gonna draw your lab and it's gonna tell us,
Correct.
or so it's hard to explain that, but I do a little bit of acupuncture and acupressure, which is actually a Chinese kind of based medicine. And so in that, there are meridians that run, some are toe to head, some are head to toe on your arms throughout your abdomen and back as well. But so for instance, the most common meridians that are imbalanced are the kidney bladder meridians, and the gallbladder liver meridians, I would say, in my opinion anyway. So every meridian holds a certain emotion. And the kidney bladder one is fear, anxiety, or being pissed off.
Right.
So
you can totally say pissed off on my talk show.
Okay.
Yep, totally. You can even swear a little more if you feel the need later. Don't hold back, Nick.
So, for instance, a lot of people will come in with knee pain or some manifestation along the kidney meridian. And more often than not, if your knee hurts on the inside part, there's some fear, anxiety that is manifesting in that meridian. So the liver and gallbladder meridians carry anger, frustration. So those are the two most common that I see. And I talk to people about them because, ultimately my goal is to help people find the root of why they're hurting or what's happening to them. And if emotion is a part of that, if you don't resolve what the root of the problem is, then it's going to stay there and probably make things worse
Right.
at some point.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the patterns that you see. So you brought one up, the inability to say no. I talk to women about that all the time. I think that is something that is really common in a small town. Like if you're the type of person that wants to get involved, you get asked to do everything. Why do you think you struggle with saying no to people or to things or to whatever it might be?
Well, we've talked about this a little bit before. I guess I feel like I am a person that doesn't want to, upset the apple cart. I don't like confrontation. I don't like people. I'm a people pleaser. I like people to like me. I don't want to any of that, bad whatever juju is
You
the
don't
word.
like it?
Yeah,
I totally get it.
I think that's a piece of it for me. So if they ask me to do something and I don't know, it's just say, okay, then I'll do it. Then for sure there's no confrontation, right?
Right. Have you ever said yes to your detriment?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
And I guess it's all dependent upon, for me, again, it's more about time management. It's like
You get spread too thin.
exactly right.
Like legitimately
Right.
too thin.
Right. And so I think part of what I've learned over the past 3 or 4 years is that, I really need to prioritize where my time needs to go. And if, you know, if I feel energetic enough or like I have enough extra time to do more, then I will. But I mean, you know, it's basically a prioritization of
Right.
I need, you know, business, kids, you know, husband, well, you know,
Not
the list goes
necessarily
on
in
and
that
on.
order.
Oh, no,
Just
no,
those
for
are the
sure.
priorities,
Yeah.
right? I talk to women a lot about the fact that like living in a small town, we need people to step up and volunteer to be a part of things. We need people on boards. We need people to serve in those different roles, right? But I always suggest that women get really clear, and again, women because they're who I talk to, like what do you actually care about? Like what do you value in your life? Because just because you can say yes to it, like even if you'd be good at it, doesn't mean you should do it.
Right.
You know, and so that's one of the ways I try to help women prioritize. Like prioritize according to the things that you actually care about. So like maybe right now you're going to say yes to some things that are more like sports related because your kids are in it and you value being there for your kids and helping those things grow. But I think the thing that makes me so sad is a lot of times I think, and I don't know, you'll have to tell me what you think. I see a lot of women say yes because they feel guilty if they don't.
Yeah.
Like if I don't do it, then who will?
And
And
there's a guilt piece for me too.
Right.
And I don't know where that comes from. I haven't figured myself out yet. You know, it might be a generational thing that I just was born with. I don't know, but I do harbor guilt about not being, you know, not being active enough in the community, not being a good enough mom, not, you know, I mean,
Oh, right.
the list could go on and on.
Right.
I don't know where that comes from, but there is some guilt.
Yeah. And I think
involved as
some
well.
of us are more wired for that than others. I feel like I've gotten a lot better because like I've had to say, I've chosen to say no because I want to have it be my best yes.
Right.
Like that wholehearted yes, I want to do this. I'll be good at it. I've got the time to give to it. And
that's
it
the other
aligns
piece.
with the things I give a crap about.
Right.
Because there are things that are great to have in our town, but I don't necessarily think I'm the right person to spearhead them. And yet you ask people, they'll think someone like me should spearhead everything, or you know, people that are.
Right.
And so the whole thing is just, I talk a lot to women that are kind of that type of person. They're the 20%ers doing, you know, the 80% of the work. But at the same time, when I think about the fact that you and I are like a next generation, right? Like we're getting to be older now. Like we're almost 40. I know. But like I'm on boards with my parents' friends, right? So we're like this next generation coming in. And the whole thing is if we keep saying yes to everything, it doesn't allow for new people or new ideas. And so when people say to me, like, if I don't do it, who will? I always just say, if no one does, then maybe that thing needs to die a natural death. Like the way that it's currently structured doesn't need to continue this way. And that's how new stuff comes about, right?
And
that's how things
okay.
change. Yeah. So yes, okay, that's one big theme, right? Not being able to say no. What other patterns do you see emerge among like the feelings that you see as kind of a common theme, especially in the women maybe that you work with? If any. Like, what do you think the fears are? So fear is a big one.
I think, I mean, we could categorize it into like, but I really think a lot of it is fear of losing control.
Okay, so fear. So the big one though, like I think that's really interesting, the fear of losing control.
Yeah. And I mean, I see a lot of like cords on the low back, which generally is rooted to financial stuff, you know, and I mean, this day and age, I mean, and maybe it was like that years ago too, but it just seems like there's just a lot of financial burden on people and it'll manifest.
What I think is interesting, and this is something that I am like, no kidding. I just said this to Jeremiah just last night. I just feel like we cannot get ahead.
Yep.
You know, we're doing fine, we're living fine. But I said to him, I'm like, I just want to sell our house and go live in a tiny little Cracker Jack box and just downsize my entire life. So do you think that that's part of potentially, like maybe it's always been that way, but I just think again, this is conjecture entirely, but I know that I get this way. As a society, like a lot of times I think we're chasing an appearance of something. I fall prey to it for sure. And I mean, I'm just admitting it.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah. And then I feel like we have a comfort level with debt that we think we have, but deep down our body's like, no. Is that fair, do you think?
Absolutely. I think that's a fair statement. Yep. And what ends up happening, I guess, in my opinion, is that, you know, we have this societal thing where we feel like we have to be like everybody else, and even if we can't afford to be like everybody else, we try to be, and then, you know, it's pretty easy to get into debt quickly, and then you're, you know, drowning.
Everything freaking costs so much.
Yes.
Everything costs so much.
Yep. But what ends up happening is that the chronic, you know, debt issue is an adrenal stress. Mm-hmm. And when we have that on top of, you know, any of our other stressors,
right,
then we end up with adrenal issues.
Like me.
And
yeah, I mean, I get that, right?
Yeah.
But
there's many of other reasons that you can have adrenal issues, but
certainly
I would say for sure that is a huge piece of it. You know, and there's people way smarter than me that come up with these, you know, stress indexes, and you can take the quiz and figure out how stressed you are. But yeah, I think that absolutely debt is a huge piece of fear, anxiety, stress.
And like I said, we think we're okay with it.
Yes.
We feel like we think we can manage it, but deep down, even if it's in the back of it's in the back of my mind all the time. That is a constant stress on my body. It's constant.
Yep.
And there are times it robs me of sleep.
And that's when maybe you know already prior to that, but when it starts to actually manifest symptoms, then it's like, okay, this is seriously affecting me.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think it's so interesting because when I've told you this, like as a little girl, I had all these big feelings, and I just basically just stuffed them down. Like, didn't talk about them, couldn't manage them, didn't know how to manage them, didn't know how to name them, didn't know crap about them except that they really weren't appropriate generally.
Yeah.
So I've been on this huge journey of trying to just learn myself. Mm-hmm. Which I think is what all of us have to do. I mean, I just think that's all of us. But I just know that for me, I feel like my body is optimally performing. Well, not optimal. It's not optimal because I still have a lot of stress. But I know it. And so when I come to you and I'm like, this is what's going on, and we work on those things, I feel so much better. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not like just talking it out with you can make all of the stress go away. No. But at least I feel like I'm managing all of it better, maybe, if that makes sense. Okay, so do you want to talk about chakras at all?
I can.
Because I think sometimes people are interested in chakra. And I'm just going to say again, like, I am so thankful that you chose to move back to our small town, and so did I, and that I get to work with you in this way. Because, so, I'll just name her, my cousin Sarah and we were together this weekend, and she has like this chronic lower back thing, and you know, her husband's from here, but I just kept saying, like, you got to get in a Nick, and she's like, I know. But scheduling when you're far away, it's just harder. So I'm just super thankful for you, because I love the work that you do. I think it's really, really important. And I know that there are people that would be like super, super jealous that I get someone like you and I'm in this small town. So I'm so glad you're here. It's cool. Okay, so chakras. By the way, can I say for the record that you told me when you balanced my chakras that I had really beautifully balanced chakras, that you were really, like, I was surprised. Mm-hmm. See, people?
Yep.
Balanced chakras.
She's doing good.
I'm working on it. Come on. Okay, so yeah, talk about that a little bit. Well, unless you feel like, did we kind of touch on most of the stuff related to...
Well, you know, chakras are a piece of it.
Right, right.
And I should have probably mentioned it before.
That's okay.
And I'm still learning about chakras. I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but basically how they were described to me is that they are like, you know how we all have systems that make up our our body, right? So we have a neurological system, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal.
Right.
Chakras are our emotional system.
Right.
Okay. So there's 8 main ones, and they start in your perineum, which is down low. And that is your root.
And not your toes.
Not your toes. Oh, gosh. That one is called your root. And then they gradually go up, and they are on both the front and back of you. And then all the way to the top is your crown chakra.
Right.
Okay. So the chakras, each one of them kind of have a theme, maybe is a good word. So for instance, the root, it is our foundation. It's our security.
Right.
It's connected to our sexuality, our reproductive organs. So all of those things, if they're strong and everything's healthy about that part of your life, then your root should be strong.
Right.
If you've had, a situation in your childhood that really uprooted you, made you insecure, that could be a divorce, your parents divorced or some abuse or anything like that, then your root will be imbalanced, and that will usually manifest in that area, low back, sacrum,
right.
root area, and so on and so forth. So like heart, for instance, that one is often imbalanced if you have had your heart broken. So that could be having a loved one, losing a loved one, getting a divorce, a big breakup if you're, anything that makes your heart hurt. So the idea with chakras is that if they aren't balanced, then, and it takes months up to years for this to happen, but if your chakras aren't balanced, then you can actually manifest disease in the associated organs over time. And it can be an emotional root.
Right.
Which to me makes sense. Most people will be like, whoa, that's possible. But it makes sense to me because
me too.
Really the chakra is kind of the energy, emotion that's connected to the organ. Well, you've probably seen some videos online where they, had the same exact plant, or even there's been a jar of sugar and all sorts of inanimate objects, and they've had people say, I hate you, and you're ugly, and all these bad things to the one and positive things to the other, and this one flourishes and that one dies.
Right.
So, if it can happen to a plant, their cellular makeup is like ours.
Right.
It can happen to us.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's an important thing that I think a lot of people either have no knowledge of or, have a hard time understanding, and therefore are, don't
not receptive to
Yes.
it, not receptive, not open.
Yeah.
To the discussion.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, as a society, we are, dependent upon our upbringing and our parents, of course, taught to kind of, like you said, stuff our emotions. We're not talking about this stuff. We're not gonna deal with this.
Right.
Well, then we generationally produce disease, which is a scary, scary thing to even talk about. But
right.
I think that's a reality.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So if a woman is listening to this, are there things, because, I would love if you had this giant boost in patience because of this talk show. But obviously not everybody watching is going to be able to book with you, and you're very busy, very full patient load already.
Right.
So are there things that you would recommend people do to either, at all? I get that that's super broad and really challenging,
Yep.
but
Yep.
even if we're talking in terms of just the acknowledgement and honoring maybe of your feelings and your emotions. Because one thing I want to say before you answer this is one of the things that you've really helped me see is that I harbor other people's shit.
Mm-hmm. And that's a super common problem.
I think I always knew that because as a energy person. Like I walk in and immediately I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
and I feel it. But like in my marriage, even I might be harboring Jeremiah's anxiety.
Yeah.
So not so much taking on just, I think all of us can feel that when you're in the presence of a very negative person, right?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty obvious. But like in this situation, I was almost like empathetically taking on something that truly wasn't mine. So how can people even begin to like figure out like what's happening? Is this mine? Is it someone else's? Like, are there tips or ideas that they can do to do that? Because that's one of the trickiest things for me is like I will literally look at you and be like, is this mine?
Yeah.
And be like, it is not reading as such. And I'm like, oh, okay, good.
Right.
But I mean, that's the hardest part.
It's
is
a
that
super
like,
big challenge.
yeah, where I'm just wondering if there's anything like, okay, let's say that you were listening, like someone listening to this is like, this is complete news to me.
Yeah.
Right. Which maybe is the case. What are there simple things that they can do even to get in touch with, let's say they have an ache
Yeah.
anywhere in their body. Is there some sort of simple baseline thing that they can do at home to try and get more in touch with what emotionally might be going on?
Well, I guess what I would suggest, I mean, there are like kind of, I guess I haven't looked into it too much, but I presume that there's probably videos out there and, you know, kind of to teach yourself how to muscle test. That's
Yes.
probably
Muscle
maybe
testing
the
is
best,
where you would want them to start probably.
the best avenue.
Right.
Otherwise, I mean, it is a difficult thing to kind of pinpoint and figure out, like, why is this happening? What is it? Whose is it? You know, whatever. Otherwise, you know, I guess I would suggest journaling, because what you'll find is that there is a common denominator when it flares up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
So maybe just emotion journaling.
yeah.
Like you're
Yep.
feeling this big thing, just get it all out down on paper, and then every time that happens,
And
so you can look
like
for
maybe who you're around.
right. So you can look for clues.
Because
kind
a lot
patterns.
of times for me, when my emotional stuff happens, it's after or when I'm with somebody.
certain people.
Yes, it's certain people. It's not. That's me personally.
Yep.
You know, it might be something
Oh wait,
else.
don't you
for
think
somebody.
most of us are like that?
Yeah, I do.
I have triggers.
Yeah.
Trigger people in my lives,
Yeah.
and like depending on where I'm at in my cycle and depending on all those things,
Right.
sometimes it's an actual problem and sometimes I just have to have the mindset going in. So that's the other thing. If you can give everybody, like, if you know you're going to see a trigger person,
Right.
are there some things that you can do? Whether it's an intention setting or an energy
Yeah.
field or something? And I get this is like way woo.
It is way woo for a lot of people.
Get it, but I don't care because this
Yeah.
is stuff that I know that it works because it's
Right.
worked in my life.
Yep.
And I speak to these crowds, like I've come to you and said that, like I need some ideas because I go in and if people come up crying to me, almost automatically, like it's like my heart just opens up and I say, come on in here.
Yep.
And that's beautiful, but it's tough.
It's
then I
draining.
hold it for
it's very
people.
exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
So if you know, okay, so like emotional journaling, getting clear and just kind of being clear about what's happening, who you're with, so you can identify maybe what the trigger is. So now let's say we know our trigger.
Yeah.
One idea even that they can say.
So what I recommend to my clients, you know, the affirmation, if we can find kind of an affirmation that it really, you know, kind of describes exactly what's happening, then affirmations are great.
Right.
We use a lot of essential oil mists. They're very protective. You know, we have Women of the Bible blends.
Right.
And they seem to be very good at kind of guarding your energy field and not allowing.
Mary.
Yes. Yeah. There's
I
Prayer of
spend
St. Francis.
Mary
there's
on me all the time.
Yeah.
Me and
Lots of
Mary,
good
we
stuff.
hang out in my office.
Yeah. The homeopathics that I mentioned earlier, they can be of benefit depending on what emotion it is, right? So
Right.
if it's anger, frustration, then you use the liver one, you know, so on and so forth.
Right.
I often will tell people to ask God for help.
Right.
Say a prayer.
Right.
And the thing that has happened to me is that I'll, set up kind of that intention and pray beforehand. And it seems as though, unfortunately, if you let your guard down for even, a split second, as soon as that intention is let down or whatever, then it's like, woo, they find that weakness and they get sucked right in. So another thing that this is just what I've learned kind of as I've gone, personally and with my patients, is that it seems as though emotional stuff will get trapped in places where there's already a weakness.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah,
so
right.
For me, my spinal weakness is my neck. And I don't necessarily know why.
Right. Like you didn't have whiplash in a car accident or anything.
No,
right.
not that I ever recall. But if I pick a spot, my neck bugs me more than any other place on my body. And that is where I get my cords. Mm-hmm. And then
and again, cords are like those emotional.
Right. Kind of emotional.
Like you can feel them.
Dumping ground.
Right.
Per se. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah. And, what I've, just for other people so they understand or so they can maybe pinpoint some on their own, is if you have a cord in a muscle, it will actually feel corded like a guitar string.
Right.
And, there's
like
different,
sinewy, it feels.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
So there's different types of spasms and muscle issues, right? If there's an actual energy cord there or an emotional cord there, it'll feel stringy, like a rope in there. So that can be one thing to kind of check for and look at, if you can feel it yourself or have somebody rub and push and then you'll know that there's probably an emotional root to the issue.
Right. Ultimately, ultimately, I wanted to have this dialogue with you because when I came to find that my emotions have a purpose and that they're there and that I should honor them instead of running away from them, I still have to learn how to not control them, but manage them.
Yep.
And channel them appropriately. Like that's all part of growing up, right? But I just think far too many times, for whatever reasons, whether it's stoicism, whether it's the small town, whether it's you are embarrassed, whether, I don't know, whatever the reasons are, the fear of judgment maybe.
Yeah.
That keeps women in particular from voicing them and just shoving them down.
Right.
We're literally making ourselves sick.
It's true.
And
it's sad. And I think
it is sad.
We really need, there's lots of things that are making us sick, right?
Absolutely.
But
right.
We really need a spokesperson or, kind of a, I don't know what the word is, revolution of, spreading this word and getting people to understand how important it is to actually manage and not stuff.
Feel your way through life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
yep.
And I don't know why, why and where we lost track of how important it is.
Again, so societally, social media, I really believe, I love social media. I've met some amazing people, but I feel like I've got a really good handle on what social media serves me and what social media does not. And I still fall victim to the time suck of looking at shit that not only does it not serve me, but it makes me feel bad about myself. Mm-hmm. So I think some of it is that we've lost touch because we're in constant comparison to the filtered versions of what other people think we should have. We look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, look how happy and beautiful and lovely and together they are. Mm-hmm. We have this misconception that everyone else has their shit together and we don't.
It's true.
And that is just not the truth.
That's
every single one of us is broken in some way, shape, or form. Yep. And by broken, I just mean has their own little nuances, right? Or neuroticisms or whatever the case is. I'm really good at some things and I really suck at other things. And so instead of just being able to say that, we want to like gloss over all of it. Mm-hmm. But the worst thing, or the biggest thing I think with all of us, is that we really ultimately cannot lie to ourselves because our bodies know better.
It's true.
And our minds, we may be able to trick our minds for a while, but your body knows better. So it's why not just say, okay, body, mind, heart, soul, spirit, like this is what we are. This is what it is. The hardest part is just like if all you had to do is sit on an island with all those parts of yourself, you'd maybe be fine. It's if we got to get around other people,
Right.
that we start to like question it or second guess it or have doubts or whatever. But that's what I think. That's what I think drives a lot of it.
For sure. I would agree with you completely.
Just lacking a lack of real connection, kind of a superficial connection where people don't know each other.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like, you know, does it go back? You know, you're talking about how we all are broken.
Right.
And
Maybe not a great word, but you know what I mean.
yeah, on social media, we gloss it up and we only put the pictures on that we want to. And I think that all comes back to a fear of judgment
I do too.
You know, I mean,
And that's what I think is more common in a small town
oh yeah,
than in a bigger community.
Yeah.
You don't worry so much about what people are going to think of you because most of the time when you go out in Fargo, you're not continually running into people that you know.
Yeah.
And you can even choose like where to go where you're almost certain you're not going to run into anybody. We're here.
You know everybody.
You know everybody. Everybody knows you. You cannot go out and not run into somebody you know.
Yep.
If any people are out at all, right?
True. Unless it's maybe 3 a.m. or something,
Right.
right? But yeah, it's true. So yeah, I mean that's a big piece of how things are different.
Yeah.
Small town versus.
And maybe that's kind of the core reason why I felt so compelled to like say, let's talk about this, you and me. And I think the thing I love the most about you is that you aren't just a friend of mine having this conversation. Like you work with people and you see it
Yeah.
every single day. And again, that doesn't mean that everyone watching is going to be like, yep, sold. Emotions cause disease. But if one person thinks differently about the stuff that they might not be honoring in themselves, because that's the first step, right? And again, like this goes back, I think about like the work that I do, the stuff that I talk about. It's like being bold to me is saying, this is who I am, and I'm going to honor all the parts of myself.
Yep.
And then I'm going to take that out into the world and I'm going to show it. And you're going to love it and you're going to love all of it. You're going to honor me. Then you're my person. You are going to judge it. You are not my person.
Yep.
And, you know, recognizing that you're not going to be for everyone.
And that's okay.
And not only is it okay, but I think it's healthier.
For sure.
You know?
For sure.
This is about like health, right? Overall physical, emotional,
Right.
spiritual health. Like if I just keep shaving all my edges so everybody will like me, then I don't really have anybody
Yeah.
that sees me.
And ultimately, I mean, that's true. You know, what we have to realize is we are who we are, and we have to find people that like us for who we are. We shouldn't be changing and adapting to fit their mold of us.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, and the whole thing too is you don't need a bunch of people.
No.
You really don't.
No.
And I know that it feels that way sometimes. Like the biggest thing that I get, like if I get the envies about anything, it's like girls' trips. Because there are people that are like, I can't believe you don't have like a big group of girlfriends. And I'm like, but I don't really. Not all that know each other.
Right.
And that, you know,
separately, yes, but not.
But
as a
if I
group.
pulled all my girlfriends together, I bet they would love each other just fine. But they don't already know each other, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's just a matter of what makes you feel less than, what makes you feel good about who you are, and just trying to avoid all that crap that makes you feel less than. Mm-hmm. And social media just does that for so many people.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's once people actually, you know, there's a lot of fear of just trying to deal with the emotions that we have, you know. I mean, I talk about fear a lot, but that's, you know, when even, I'm sure, you know, if somebody comes on and listens to this, you know, even just talking about emotions, there's some fear involved in just
Right.
discussing it.
Right.
And, you know, I think what it does, once you kind of spearheaded and realize how important it is and that you really want to delve into it more, it helps you hone in on, you know, who you want to be, and you know, helps you grow as a person.
Right.
Which
It frees us.
Yes. And I think people who have never either had anybody explain it to them or don't know, you know, don't have much knowledge base on it. I mean, they don't even know that it's hindering them. Like, it's like this hidden thing.
It's a complete lack of awareness
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
Right.
Ignorance.
They don't know what they don't know,
yes.
kind of a thing.
Yes. So I guess I would just, if anything, encourage people to not be afraid. It's just, it's our emotions. It's us. It's, and you know, I mean, it's not a scary thing.
Right.
And I think as you know, everybody will have their own journey and figure it out. But it'll be for the better.
Right.
So
just allow yourself to tune in.
exactly. Yep.
Gosh, because that could go down a whole rabbit hole too, right? Because think of all the ways that we numb out so we don't feel the yucky stuff. Like, there's tons of things that we do.
Yes,
And,
there is.
you know, and I've caught myself, like, shopping is one of the things that I do. Because I get that nice little adrenaline kick when I buy something new. I mean, it's not compulsive, but it is something, like, I will literally be, all of a sudden, I'll, like, stop working and I'll, like, go on Etsy or I'll go on wherever. And then I'll be like, what am I looking for? And I'll be like, oh, that's right. I'm just feeling kind of bored, or I'm feeling kind of shitty,
Right.
or I'm feeling something, right?
Yep.
And so just trying to, like, slow the F down and tune in and say, okay,
Right.
what's really going on? What am I really thinking? What am I really feeling? And I think journaling is it's a great tip
Yep.
for people just to kind of,
I would
start.
say and this doesn't happen very often, but you know, if I've had a real emotional day at work, generally it's work related. You know, somebody came in and it's really struggling, and it, you know, it affects me. I mean,
course.
I'm human, right?
Right.
And then I will carb load.
right.
Right? And I don't know necessarily why, but it's like, oh my gosh, just give me a bowl of noodles.
Give me all the carbs. Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, it can be shopping, it can be eating, it can be drinking. You know, any of those.
Stepping out on your spouse. Seriously, I think that, like, a lot of the vices that
Yeah,
we have comes from a unwillingness to face what's going on.
for sure. So I'm not, you know, I've been told many a times that I'm like a counselor or a therapist,
Right.
and I guess to a degree, I feel like I am at times.
Right.
I don't have any knowledge or training in that, but it's a piece of that holistic, full body health, and that's what I try to bring.
Right.
And you know, I just, until you have experienced it for yourself, I think you underestimate the importance of the emotional piece of who we are.
Right.
But if you think about it, I mean, it's as big as the physical piece, if not bigger, because if we didn't have emotions, we're just empty shells of nothing.
Right. Who cares what your body can do?
Right.
If you don't feel anything.
Exactly.
Ever.
So, I mean, when you think about how important it is, like if you know, were to, let's say we're a big, you know, percentage,
Right.
100% of a
Right.
circle, you know, I mean, and how big of a percentage our body is, that emotional piece. And the fact that a lot of people do nothing at all
To nurture.
to nourish it.
Right.
It's crazy when you think of it that way.
Right.
You know, we focus so much on clean eating, which is important.
Oh,
And-
absolutely.
And exercise and all these other things that help both the physical and the biochemical piece, but we totally ignore emotional chunk, which we shouldn't. So
Right.
there you
Right.
go.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming on, Nick.
Yeah. I hope I didn't disappoint.
You did not disappoint. You're the second person that has said that. You're not capable of disappointment. So I'm just going to make a quick little plug for you. So if people like were in the area and wanted to actually come and see you, they better expect to wait a little bit, but that's okay, right? So you're right here in good old Oaks, North Dakota. Name of your practice is?
Back to Health Chiropractic Clinic.
Okay. Want to throw your number out? Not your personal number.
701-742-3386.
3386 742 3386. And do you want to plug what's coming next?
I can.
Yeah, do it.
All right.
Is this going to be maybe like an unveiling to the people that live here? Does everybody kind of know?
Well,
maybe?
I think there's
Enough
some
maybe
that,
rumor about it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
It's been going in progress for
That's
long
okay.
enough that a lot of people know about it. But my intentions, I have my office is in the back of my in-laws' old cafe.
Right, and we're sitting in it, by the
Yeah.
way, right?
Yep.
That's where we're at.
And so I purchased the building from them, and my husband and I have been remodeling it. And the new piece of the business is called Wellness Central Market and Eatery.
Oh, you named it. I didn't know
Yeah.
you named it. How exciting.
And so that is hopefully going to be unveiled here within the next year.
Okay.
So
And what's going to happen in there? So eatery, you're going to have,
yeah, so the idea is that, we talked about clean eating very shortly.
right. Yep.
But we only have one grocery store in our town, and it it doesn't have a ton of selection for fresh fruits, vegetables.
Right.
It's fine, but
And it has not, I mean, it doesn't have that specialty kind of section of
Right.
gluten-free,
right,
all the frees that people might need for certain
Right,
intolerances
right.
and such, right?
yeah. So
Which I think, let's just be real, is pretty damn common in a small town.
yeah, well,
It's
just
one of the
everywhere
things
now.
we all miss the
Yeah.
most about being in a bigger community.
Yeah.
If you've lived there and then came back, but
So the idea is to kind of have a toned down version of Natural Grocers.
Right.
Very condensed, small. And then I wanted to provide kind of a healthy food option for lunch for people. Because right now we have, pizza, convenience store,
and your typical diner.
typical diner food.
Right.
So that is what's
Super exciting.
on the
I'm totally going to
plan.
do like a Facebook Live from it when it comes up. And then you guys
Okay.
can all watch along and come and join us.
Yeah. So lots of exciting
It's super
stuff.
cool. It's super cool. Well, again, thank you for coming. Thank you for being one of my people. That makes me feel like a sane person in this little town of ours.
No problem.
And thank you for doing what you do. Super important work.
Thank you for having me.
I love you.
Love you too.